What's up, everyone? Blaze here, and today we are checking out Chapter 1 of the first Umbrella Academy book titled Apocalypse Suite. At the end, I'll provide my reaction to it and talk about what is different between the comic and the Netflix TV series. Three things before we start. Number one, go buy these books. They have incredible artwork, and the story isn't 100% identical to the show. Hopefully, my synopsis will encourage you to purchase them yourself, or maybe you already have and want another perspective. Either way, thanks for watching, subscribing, and hitting that like button. The books are available on Amazon for a reasonable price. Number two, there will be massive spoilers from here on. If you haven't seen the Netflix series through season 2, you will be spoiled. I usually don't spend too much time on these spoiler warnings, but something shows up on page 3 of the comic that isn't addressed until season 2 of the show. You have been warned. Number 3, this episode is entirely focused on chapter 1 of the first book, Apocalypse Suite. So please keep the comments spoiler-free for future chapters and novels. I will cover the rest of the chapters in future episodes, and I have not seen anything past this chapter yet, so be patient, my friends. We'll start with the story and move on to my reaction, and then talk about how it's different from the Netflix series. So let's go ahead and get started. The story begins in a wrestling match of all places, and a bit of narration to build the world. It was the same year Tusslin Tom Gurney knocked out the space squid from Rigel X9. It happened at 9:38 p.m. It came from an atomic flying elbow. And in that moment, without warning, and in an occurrence of complete coincidence, 43 extraordinary children were born, to mostly single women who had shown no signs of pregnancy, in seemingly random locations around the world. The children were either abandoned or put up for adoption, the ones who survived. Enter Sir Reginald Hargreaves, aka the Monocle, world-renowned scientist and wealthy entrepreneur, inventor of the televator, the levitator, the mobile umbrella communicator, and clever crisp cereal. Olympic gold medalist and recipient of the Nobel Prize for his work in the cerebral advancement of the chimpanzee. Space alien. For reasons unknown, Sir Reginald set out with his bodyguard, Abhijat, aboard his private vessel, the Minerva, rumored to be powered by the remains of King Amen Karej IV. Using methods undisclosed, he sought to track down and adopt as many of the children as he could. He only found 7 of them. Wiping their identities and concealing the children from the world, Sir Reginald held a press conference in Stockholm in which journalist Cosimo Delastrano from Milan asked, "Why have you adopted these 7 children?" To this, Hargreaves replied, "To save the world, of course." To which the world asked, "From what?" They received no answer, for it was the last time Sir Reginald and the children were seen, until that day. We then cut to the Eiffel Tower in Paris 10 years later, where a man crashes into a souvenir cart on the ground level. A Paris guard comes by to investigate, and asks the shop owner to confirm if the man fell out of the sky. The shop owner says yes. And the guard asks if he thinks the man had jumped. Another onlooker answers the question. No, he was thrown. As the guard replies, that is ridiculous. About an hour later, the ground is riddled with more and more bodies that have been thrown from the tower. Just as the guard attempts to radio in and request more, I'm assuming backup, a young voice interrupts. "Excuse me, officer, but I believe we can be of assistance." The guard asks, "Who the hell are you?" And the boy explains that the Eiffel Tower has gone crazy and must be stopped at all costs. The guard replies that the children are the ones who have gone insane. The boy is accompanied by 4 other young children, 3 boys and a girl. As he begins to introduce one of his subordinates, number 3, they all reach for their belt and press a button to levitate off the ground. Number 3 then calls out to the crowd, "Citizens of Paris, I heard a rumor that the Musée d'Orsay is giving out many of its fine paintings. They're also serving crepes." Number 1 tells number 3 good job on dispersing the crowd, but expresses disappointment in having to recover those paintings later on. Number 2 points to the top of the tower and calls out to number 1. At the top of the tower glows a bright green ball of energy that shoots down to the ground where our heroes are standing. Number 1 orders them to spread out and attack, as the tower seems to send more energy to other parts of the city. The scene then moves to the sky on board the Minerva with the monocle and a young girl, piloted by Abhijat. The young girl asks the monocle, "Why can't I play with the others?" addressing him as Dad before correcting herself to Mr. Monocle. Her adopted father explains, "Well, number 7, there's just nothing special about you," much to her disappointment. Number 7 then asks where number 5 is, since she didn't see him down there. The monocle explains that he presumes number 5 is in the future, and ushers number 7 off to play her violin. Back at the tower, the group manages to reach the top of the structure, although it appears a couple of their levitation belts are malfunctioning or have been lost. As number 6 holds on to the tower using the squid tentacles that protrude from his chest, he grips the hand of number 4. As their grip begins to slip, number 4 shouts, "Don't let go of me." He then explains that he is trying to contact a dead engineer from the spirit world that can tell us how to stop the threat. Number 2 shouts, "Save your breath, we're all gonna die." Just then, number 1 tells his brother to shut up and gives the tower a swift punch, knocking the structure down on its side. Number 2 calls his brother a show-off as number 1 explains he has a hunch and directs the group to the control tower. When they arrive, number 1 smashes one of the walls of the control room, and just beyond the broken bricks, the team is shocked to find zombie robot Gustave Eiffel. Number 2 is surprised to see him alive after all these years, then states that he won't be alive for much longer. Number 2 then hurls a throwing knife at the zombie robot, hitting him in the forehead and pinning him to the control panel on board. Sparks begin to fly and a launch sequence begins. Number 1 commands the group to get out. As the kids hustle away from the Eiffel Tower that is now blasting off, number 4 questions what is happening. Number 1 explains, "I think it's taking off." And a confused number 3 asks, "But why?" Just then, the monocle steps in and answers their question. "Because it's not a monument, children. It's a spaceship." Surprised to see him there, the children call out, "Dad!" The monocle again insists that they do not call him Dad, and explains that they saved Paris, despite losing the Eiffel Tower. The kids are then presented with the key to the city and treated to ice cream from a nearby street vendor. Number 1 looks up to the monocle and tells him that someday he would like to go into space, and the monocle replies, "So you shall, number 1. So you shall." From here, the scene jumps to 20 years later, and on the moon, to an older number 1 wearing a spacesuit and standing on the cliffs of the deserted environment. While looking out to the Earth, he receives a transmission from Annihilation Control. "Tell them I'm busy," he says. However, Control explains that it is Dr. Pogo on the phone. Number 1 directs Control to keep him on the line, and jetpacks his way back to the control base. Inside the base, Number 1 removes his spacesuit and takes the call. Plastered on the walls of the facility, we see posters and newspaper articles with various headlines. Mars mission failure, Umbrella Academy disbanded, the Jennifer incident, and the horror dead. Number 1 asks Pogo if there is any news from Earth. We don't see Pogo's side of the conversation, but he seemingly requests that Number 1 return to Earth as soon as possible. Number 1 responds, "Negative, Pogo. You know I can't leave my post. A threat may finally..." He's interrupted by Pogo. "What?" "Oh, I'm on my way." Number 1 hangs up the phone as a robot companion approaches and tells him that the ship is ready, calling him Number 1 and asking if he will be requiring his laser pistol. Number 1 addresses the robot as Ben and agrees to take the pistol, but explains that he will need to be reprogrammed when Number 1 returns. "Only my father calls me Number 1, he says. We get a glimpse of Number 1's larger-than-usual feat as he boards a ship, straps in, ignites the engines, and sets a course for Earth. The scene then shifts to an apartment in the city. The phone rings. On the nightstand is a book titled Extraordinary, My Life as Number 7, by Vanya Hargreaves. The woman in the apartment picks up the phone. "Hello?" A mysterious voice asks her, "You know your father is dead, right?" The woman asks the caller to identify themselves. The caller explains that they didn't expect her to be broken up about the death, given all the nasty things she wrote in her book. The caller then informs the woman that they are conducting a suite and that there's an opening for first chair. They then ask the woman to audition. The woman replies, "And why would I do that?" The caller responds with one word, revenge, and tells the woman to be at the Icarus Theater at noon the following day, before hanging up the phone. The scene shifts again to the Umbrella Academy as number one spacecraft crash lands in front of the mansion. He is greeted by the monocle's assistant, Abhijat, and proceeds through the home to Pogo's office. On the wall, we see a painting of the monocle with another woman. As number one enters the office, Pogo greets him. "Space boy." Number one asks if it is true what he was told on the phone. Pogo confirms that yes, Sir Reginald Hargreaves is dead. Just then, a young number 5 emerges from the shadows, and something worse is coming, he says. Number 1, shocked to see his brother, asks where he's been for the last 20 years. Pogo interrupts. Now, Space Boy, it can wait. You're home now, and the others will be here tomorrow." So that is Chapter 1 of Apocalypse Suite of the Umbrella Academy, and I didn't really know what to expect before I picked up the book and before I started reading it. I've not read beyond this. I've not read a single thing beyond this. So I'm actually kind of excited to read the rest, and I did not expect for it to be as different as it is. Some of the things I was surprised to see were things like giant squids. I did not expect there to be giant squids. I did not expect space travel to be a common theme of this world and this universe. I did not think that on page 3 we were going to get a big reveal of Hargreaves being a space alien. That's insane, but it's very, very cool. I think it's important to note here that the book opens up, or the chapter opens up on a wrestling match, but they go out of the way to call it a coincidence that the children were born right as this wrestler was landing the finishing blow in this match. I don't think these two events are connected, but it's kind of funny how they open the book, or they open the whole story with a wrestling match. It seems like they were born at a different time than is stated in the show. I don't think it talks about the date necessarily, but it does talk about the time, 9:38 p.m., whereas in the show they were all born at noon on October 1st. So that's interesting how they make that distinction. The time might mean something, but I don't know if that's really gonna be a thing. I talked about Hargreaves as a space alien already. I think one of the cool things here is that they do talk about Hargreaves being an inventor, the televator, the levitator, and the mobile umbrella communicator. I think those are going to come into play as events unfold. I kind of wonder if they're ever going to show up in the show. But the levitator is interesting because they actually use that in in the first real mission of the children. I think that's really cool that they do actually use a levitator and they fly basically. You see all the kids flying to what appears to be the top of the tower, which I think is really cool. The gold medalist thing is kind of strange. In the show, we do get a glimpse of that from Grace, and it sounded like maybe she was just saying that because she was programmed to say that, but it looks like in the comics there's some truth to it. He was a gold medalist, so that's pretty cool. He does train these kids for saving the world, but we still don't know from what. There's never anything given, and even in the show, there's not anything given. But very interesting there. The first mission section is a little bit hard to follow because I felt like there were kind of panels missing from this transition, from the moment where the guard says, "Why, that's ridiculous," to then seeing all of the bodies that have fallen out of the tower and him calling for backup. I felt like they could have maybe explained that a little bit more. You really had to focus in on this panel to understand it. And some books do that. From my understanding, I haven't read a whole lot of comic books, but most of them are pretty good about explaining something for you. But this one kind of took some interpretation. It's also kind of unclear about who says no, he was pushed. I'm guessing it was the shop owner, but it's kind of hard to say. I was actually kind of impressed when I saw number 1 just punch the Eiffel Tower and knock it flat on its side. Not something I expected to happen. We really don't get a good understanding of his power in the TV show, and this is just insane. He punches the Eiffel Tower and it just falls down. It's very, very cool. And then when they broke open the control room to reveal zombie robot Gustav Eiffel, I did not expect there to be a zombie robot in this story as well. So at this point, we've got squids, we've got zombie robots, we've got aliens, we've got a lot of stuff that I did not expect to see. And it's cool though. It's cool in its own way because it's its own world, and I kind of like it. I'm very interested to see how the rest of it plays out, but I have to say I'm very impressed. We don't really get a really good understanding in chapter 1 about who has what powers and what they can really do. You know, we see number 1 punch the Eiffel Tower. We see number 3 use the rumor. We see number 6 use the tentacles and the squid tentacles. And then we kind of get an understanding of number 4, who can speak with the dead, but we don't really get anything definitive in this. Number 2 can throw knives, apparently, but we don't really get to see that he can control where they go or anything like that, like he does in the show. So, very interesting. There's a couple things that happen on the moon, which I think are very cool. The first one is that we see all these like newspaper articles that are hanging on the walls. We do get to see the Mars mission failure headline: Spaceboy critically injured. An experimental surgery saves his life. That's something that's addressed in season 2 of the show, but I think it was maybe a little bit different. There's the Jennifer incident, which we really don't know much about that. I'm very curious to see what that's all about. And even in the background of the space station, when Luther hangs up the phone, we see a giant squid. So I'm guessing maybe he's on the lookout for more aliens or giant squids. I think it's very interesting that the robot is named Ben, after probably after his brother who passed away. And then when he climbs into the rocket, you get to see his feet. I mentioned that through the story because I wanted to call that out. We don't really get to see the feet of number 1 in the show, but here we get to see his feet, and they're very much monkey feet. So I don't know if that's going to be addressed in the show. It probably doesn't need to be. And I'm happy with the way that they've portrayed Luther so far in the show. So I don't really want to say that that's going to be a canon thing, but we'll definitely see. In the apartment, the woman in the apartment is most likely Vanya. They do have names, so it's something that I think will come up later on in the book, is that they do have names. Vanya was given this name. Not sure where she got it at this point in the comics, but the book is written by Vanya Hargreaves. My Life is Number 7. I believe this woman is Vanya Hargreaves, but it's kind of hard to say. I think it's interesting how she is going to audition for first chair in the first chapter of the book. We don't really see her do that until much later in season 1 of the Netflix series. So, and that's only after someone's killed. It's only after the first chair is killed by Vanya's boyfriend that she even gets a chance to audition. So, kind of interesting. Not sure who the person on the phone is. I tried to be vague about it. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but it's vague. So whoever this person is conducting the Apocalypse Suite. So this could be someone of importance down the line. We'll definitely see. As Luther arrives at the mansion, it's interesting how this is a mansion that kind of lives on the outskirts of the city. It's different. I think I like it better being in the city. I think that's a cooler location for the mansion to reside. The assistant Abijat is someone that I wanted to talk about a little bit too, because I think it's very interesting that the assistant is from what we can tell so far, not a robot. As Spaceboy is walking up the stairs, we do see that painting of Hargreaves and a young girl, presumably someone that he maybe had a love interest with. Maybe we'll get more background information on that. But that was something I wanted to point out while I read the story, because I thought that was interesting to see that picture there. Knowing what I know about the show, it seems like maybe that person might be important. And finally, we see Dr. Pogo, the chimpanzee, and number 5 coming out of the shadows, with Spaceboy surprised to see him as young, having been missing for 20 years. So that happened in the show as well. I think that was a cool situation when 5 finally showed up. We got to see him come out of the portal and in a young body. So yeah, I'm excited to read chapter 2, but I think as far as differences and things that happened differently from the show, I talked about some of them already while I was going through the different panels, but I think I understand why they made some of the changes, even if I don't fully understand them just yet. So, for example, the Abijat assistant compared to Grace, the mother, I think that decision was a really good decision as far as character development and showing that connection between Diego and his mom. I do rather enjoy the idea of Grace being the mother and the caretaker, and Diego's attachment to her, and that's a really cool storyline that they got a lot of emotion out of when the show aired. I think the casting for the show was great. In the comics, we see mostly Caucasian children, but I think the casting was great, that they have a diverse cast and a diverse lineup of superheroes here. That's pretty awesome. And I think saving that reveal of Hargreaves being an alien until season 2, I think was pretty darn cool. I think that was a reveal that for the show is going to make a lot of sense, but it was something that for whatever reason was revealed right away in the comics. So this world is a world with spaceships and squids and aliens, and I think that if they had introduced all of that stuff in the first episode of the show, it probably would have been a little bit weirder and may have turned people off. But I like that they're kind of gradually introducing some of that stuff. If they gradually introduce it, it could be a situation where we never see a single squid or we never see a single spaceship. Although I do think we saw Hargreaves' aircraft in the first episode when he went to round up the children. Not sure if that's supposed to be the Minerva or if that's just an aircraft that he designed or something along those lines. Or maybe he just bought it. I don't know. But I think it's cool. I do feel like I'm missing something as far as what's been revealed in these first few pages so far. If I did miss something, please let me know in the comments as far as something to point out or something interesting that you noticed about the comics that maybe I missed. But please limit those to chapter 1 only, so I can experience the comics without any expectations or any spoilers as I go through them. Obviously, guys, please keep the spoilers to a minimum, or at least warn people who are looking at the comments below. If you're going to put comments, please limit them to this chapter only, and compare what is in the show to what's here. Please don't spoil anything. I'm going to go through all of these chapters and post videos for them as well. So you'll see my reactions, and I may not read your comment if there are spoilers, but I will come back after I've read everything there is in the first 2 books, and possibly going into the 3rd book as well. I will go into the 3rd book just at some other time. But I really want to take my time with this because I love the show so much. It's my favorite show of all time, and I just want to know everything I can about it. So that is chapter 1. I do want to thank you guys for watching today. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I will certainly be back with more Umbrella Academy content, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching.